Sauntering, he says.
We're sauntering. We are live as I saunter in. Hey, everybody, welcome to SVT time. It is Tuesday. It's SVT time. It's what else is it? This is episode 81 of SVT time. I know, like I said, we will continue to do this until they tell us to stop or throw us out or one or the other. But anyways, I say this every week. It's a special SVT time because every SVT time is really a special SVT time. But today, with Dom and myself, we've got Ryan Feves and Sam Hwang. And the whole, by all means. So this... In case you don't know Ryan and Sam work for Yamaha Guitar Group, just like Dom and I. We're giving you a behind-the-scenes look at what goes on at YGG behind sound design and product development. There's some things we can't talk about, otherwise they'll shoot me if I do bring it up. But first and foremost, the whole purpose of this is to introduce guys that we work with and gals that we work with at YGG and let you all know that, everybody here is a musician. Everybody's a bass player. And we were just talking about this before we started. It was like the whole purpose of this is to let everybody know, like Ryan, Sam, you guys, we're all bass players here that just happen to work for a really cool amplifier company. And anyways, I'm going to shut up for a second here. Please welcome Ryan. Please welcome Sam. Guys, thank you so much for doing this. I'm so excited to have you guys on.
And I'll start by saying just Ryan and Sam are both not only powerhouse bassists, but powerhouse sound engineers. Nothing gets by them in the best way. They have worked on pretty much everything Ampeg since we acquired Ampeg in 2018, 2019. So we're talking 50th anniversary SVT, SGTDI, SVT Suite, Rocket Bass, Venture, all the goodness.
Everything, yeah. And improving some of the previous models that YGG inherited from Loud. They, you guys dug in and, pointed out certain things that needed to be fixed there. So anyways, I'm going to start with Ryan. Ryan, so... And looking at both your promo shots that were in the advertisement, you guys are both upright players. We're all upright players too. But Ryan, would you consider yourself primarily an upright or an electric player?
Sort of started the same.
Yeah.
But I think the first time I played the bass was upright. Actually, my dad always had an upright in the house. I started on violin. So
oh wow,
when I was about 10, I thought about switching to viola. But there were no violas in the school system, and there was a bass. So my music teacher came and got me out of school and said, "Hey, I can't find a viola, but I found a bass. You want to check it out?"
Cool.
And she taught me how to play "Twinkle Twinkle Little Star," and the fingerings are different. Your bass is tuned in fourths, violins in fifths. So she showed me that, and then sent me on my way.
Now, how old were you then when that all?
I was 10, fourth grade.
Okay. All right. And Sam, how about you? Do you consider yourself more of an upright or more of an electric player? And when did you start?
I definitely started more as an electric player. I only really picked up the upright maybe in the last 4 years or so.
Okay.
So it's a journey. I still sometimes don't know what to do with the stick in my hand, but
none of us do.
Yeah, it's pretty good with it.
As they say, if you can't dazzle them with brilliance, baffle them with what.
Yeah. Great software patches for Bode double bass.
Right.
Ryan, you grew up. Did you guys both grow up in musical families? You had mentioned something about your parents, but I've always seen like old records and posters and stuff in your office, and I always wondered.
Yeah, so my dad was a bass player, and his brother and sister both played professionally in orchestras. His brother in Europe, my aunt Julie here in LA, and in the studios and with the Long Beach Symphony. And my cousin Richard's a bass player. My aunt Julie married a bass player named Mel Graves up in the Bay Area. So there were a lot of musicians and bass players in my family as well.
Wow. You guys ever have like inner family bass off?
Yeah, I mean, I actually play a lot with my cousin Richard because he is a fantastic piano player.
Oh, wow.
So, and so he, it's like it's a dream situation where you're playing with a bass player that plays piano, and it's you can't beat it.
Yeah.
Sometimes we'll play bass duets as well, but
nice.
A great accompanist to be able to play with like that is a dream scenario.
That is cool. I'm sure there's a lot of really cool instruments in the family too.
Yeah, my Aunt Julie plays bassoon, so it's another bass clef instrument.
Wow.
Yeah.
My Uncle Michael plays cello, bass clef instrument. His kids both play in Amsterdam, violin and bass, and mostly strings. But my cousin Jesse plays trumpet as well. So
Okay.
tons of music, all my life.
Man.
Sam, how about you?
Okay.
Oh, yeah.
Me, I'm more or less the main guitar player, but I mostly come from a family of singers, actually. So my sister was, singing professionally for a little bit before she got out of that. I have another cousin that's a professional musical theater singer in Korea. And my aunts and uncles were, professional singers at different, house of worship stuff for a while too. But yeah, as for me, like I kind of started in the house of worship scene, scene.
I mean, it is kind of a
yeah, it is.
Yeah. For a long time, and then kind of went from there. So, but basses, I'm probably the only. Well, actually, I do have a cousin. I have one cousin in Germany who plays upright as well, and a bunch of symphonic orchestras. He's played with Qatar Symphonic. I think he's with the Luxembourg Symphonic right now.
nice.
Which, by the way, my last trip to Amsterdam, I saw the Luxembourg Orchestra play.
Oh, really? You might have seen my cousin.
I think
Wow.
we talked about this after I got back, but I probably saw your cousin.
Yeah.
I can't remember the piece though.
That is so cool.
It's a
Now,
small world.
Ryan, would you consider yourself more of an orchestral player? Because I've heard you play jazz too, but when I was reading your bio,
I grew up. I played in the orchestra with my dad as a kid, but I was never really an orchestral player. I always dug that and did it a little bit, but I'm sort of a journeyman.
Okay.
Pop and jazz and country music, a little bit of everything, really. And I think that's my bread and butter, is to get that variety. So in an orchestral setting, I'm not really. That's not my comfort zone, but it's something I enjoy doing when I get the chance to do it. And
Sure.
hopefully, don't ham it up too much when I do.
What kind of push? Oh, go ahead, Dino.
No, I was just going to say it's the same instrument, but it is definitely a different discipline too, in terms of how you interact with other music.
Yeah, and maybe also some setup. Like it's hard to find a bass that does both really well. I think there are some great bass players that do orchestral and pop music, like Mike Valerio here in LA. Great bass player who can double on both, and I think a lot of those type of players would find an instrument that can do both. But orchestra players set up their basses very different than the rest of us.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. Dawn, what were you going to say?
Sorry. Ask, what took either of you, or both of you, really, into kind of beyond the veil of just playing and enjoying music, and then wanting to. Because you guys do everything from I swear between the two of you could wire anything, fix anything in terms of an instrument. I've had Sam fix tons of my instruments like that, and they're just better than any factory quality you're gonna get. And same with Ryan in terms of circuits. It's I'm like, hey, I think if we could blend this with this, it's you already know circuitry wise what's going on there. What kind of took your intrigue beyond playing into that realm?
Sam, you take this one.
Oh, okay. I guess I've always been, if I had any superpower, it would be basically just repairing stuff. Mostly because I got a lot of practice because my sister has a natural superpower of breaking stuff.
Awesome.
So I had a lot of practice growing up. So, I worked basically about 13-ish years as a professional luthier, fixing guitars, basses, and then anything else that basically came through the music store doors, including the kitchen sink. One time I had to step outside and fix someone's car. It was, But anyways, anything new comes into the house, I end up basically taking it apart and fixing it. The joke I like to tell, it didn't really work well with my first hamster, but you learn.
The hamsters before, I feel like.
So yeah,
that's awesome.
So, just a very.
I was always kind of around it as a kid with my dad. Had a music store, so there were people bringing in stuff to be fixed, but I didn't really dive into it fully until one of the first tours I did. My friend Woody was really into gear and really into it, even so much as building and designing stuff himself. He kind of got me into the gear chase of how to design and build whatever wasn't available at that time. And this would have been early 2000s, very early 2000s.
Mm-hmm.
And I'd already kind of dug into it a little bit myself, because around that time, schematics and things started to become available on the internet more readily. So I really do credit my friend Woody, though, for kind of taking me down the electronics rabbit hole initially. And that's, that was the start of a great adventure for me.
Right. Did you go to did you take any courses or go to school for electronics or?
I didn't. At some point, my wife hit me to the fact that one can go to UCLA and just join a class. And so I took a lot of classes at the UCLA School of Engineering.
Okay.
But I would just crash the class, and professors were cool with it. I get to know the professors. And so I took a lot of courses that way.
Nice. I just I know, there's been times without getting us into too much trouble, but I know there's been times like Dom would say, yeah, Ryan, we were talking about this certain pedal, this certain circuit, and Ryan just built one in his spare time at home on the weekend. And I'd be like, oh, okay. I made a cake.
Yeah. I built a lot of stuff.
I think
and still,
I'm more fascinated by the fact that you guys do that for your, quote unquote day job, but you do it all day long, and then it's on the weekend you're like, yeah, and then I just built this pedal out of fun. That's
right.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, it's touching, for sure.
We got a cool question from Cameron.
I can't. Yeah, for some reason I'm not logged into the app. So thank you.
I can kind of see what's the main difference. Electric bass string action. It varies a lot with upright players, but I think a lot of players in orchestras, they want strings that maybe sound a little more dead or higher action. They really want to be able to lay down things that sound smooth and full. Yeah. And it's not so much about when you play pizzicato, getting that attack on the notes and really blending with the drum kit. My thing is the struggle I have is how do I get an upright bass that's going to blend with a drum kit and a kick drum really well. And orchestra, they don't, I shouldn't say blend. I want the blend, but I want the bass to be heard, and I want everything to stick out. In the orchestra, it's more of just that big sound blending with the other basses. Basses that you have to figure out how to make it sound like one bass. So
yeah, because you'll be in a section at that point. You'll have 2 or 3 other basses and playing, some of you doubling parts, and a lot of you are doubling parts. But
yeah, I think one of the arts of that type of playing is trying to figure out how to work with other bass players and make it sound like one instrument.
Sure.
Yeah.
Whereas, like you say, in a jazz setting or a rock setting with electric bass, there's only one bass player, so you're kind of you're developing your own sound to fit in between everything else. Versus, it's funny. I saw somebody was on one of the Facebook pages the other day, and they had a picture of, I think it was Zyvex. I might be saying that wrong, but upright strings from Diodario. And, they're the set for a set of upright, I think for the Zyvex, they were a couple $100. And they were like, wow, basically they thought they were electric bass strings. They didn't realize they were upright strings. And they were questioning why are these strings so darn expensive? $200. And a bunch of people chimed in. They're like, oh, no. Upright strings are a completely different, for synthetic gut strings, that's actually a very reasonable price at $200. So it is.
Arrows are very affordable for upright strings.
Yeah.
Half of what the Piastros and others cost.
Yep.
Yeah, it's a hassle.
Yeah. And that,
I would say being a bassist of most string instruments is one of the most expensive to choose overall, in terms of just cost of a bass, cost of strings, cost of, maintaining.
There's also that hassle of when you do change them, it takes a couple weeks before at least for me, it takes a couple weeks before it's okay, we're good. Things are in tune. Things don't sound funny.
Yeah.
And that in a couple weeks.
And that's why, you know, upright players are very reluctant to try new strings too. The price and the time it takes for setup and break in. It's like, you know, I think I probably had the same set of Tomastics on my K now for, I'm going to say probably 5 years.
Same with me and mine. BSX. I don't change those.
Yeah.
I change very, very infrequently for most compared to a lot of upright players.
Yeah.
But a lot of it is through the cost. It's just like if it's working, I don't want to take that extra time to break a new set in. And
I'm the same way with electric strings. I hate changing electric strings too. Unless
I never change electric strings. I have a bass with strings on it that are 50 years old.
Right.
I almost cried when I broke a string once. I had to replace it and try to get it to match the other thing. And I was like in tears. I'm like, oh man, what am I gonna do?
Man. I'm the weirdo that's the opposite. It's like unless they're flats, I'm like changing them all the time.
I used to be that way. I would change mine pretty frequently, but it's just I get to the point I was just like, it's just I don't enjoy changing strings anymore. Like to me, it's kind of like
I definitely don't enjoy it.
If I could pay somebody to do it, then I probably would. But
I was the one people were paying, so I'm fine with it.
Damn, if we live closer, I would be paying you to change my strings, my friend. Speaking of that, so let's move on a little bit here. But so what brought you to now? You guys were already working at Line 6 YGG when I came on board, when Ampeg was purchased by YGG. Am I correct in saying that? I know Sam's saying yes, but Ryan, were you there when Ampeg came on?
I was not. I came in about a year after the Ampeg acquisition.
Okay. All right.
Yeah.
All right. What brought you guys to YGG though? Like what was, obviously most musicians I know, we all need a job at some point, but like seriously, what drew you over to YGG in the sound design department?
So you take this one, Sam, since you came in first.
So for me, it was specifically Ben was the person that actually brought me into YGG. Ben Adrian, as you know, our head of our sound design team. But the kind of realization I had was like when I was growing up, I always wanted to be this, this term sound engineer, because I loved music, I loved guitars and stuff like that. But I was more on the engineering side. I remember like in junior high or something like that, they're like, oh, you can go and have a career day and shadow with the sound engineer for a day. I'm like, okay, great. And then we went to like K-Rock or something like that, and it was not quite what I was expecting because I wanted more kind of an engineering type of thing. So my original plan was just go into like a mechanical or electrical engineering, and just do music stuff on the side. And then I was working at a guitar store, and because of my more fix all the things kind of mindset, I ended up, fixing all instruments and anything else that came in. So when Ben actually was the person that came into my old shop and, kind of saw me fixing stuff all the time, and Ben's kind of a, person to just hang out at local guitar stores and, get to know people and stuff. And he kind of what he calls gave me a year-long unofficial interview.
Sounds like Ben.
Yeah. And he kind of found that I had, somewhat competent way of looking at things and find sometimes even really weird ways of solving unique problems. And he thought I would be really great fit for YGG. And he, asked me to come by to the office and take a look around. And basically, that ended up being was like, oh, this is exactly what I imagined as my dream job when I was a kid. So like being, an engineer, doing the technical side of things as well as supporting music and stuff like that. And so that's kind of how I got into it. So it's been my dream job the entire time I've been here.
Very cool. Awesome. And I do want to point out real quick, anybody that was at NAMM in January that came into the Yamaha Guitar Group, the YGG room, that saw any of our performances, whether it was Vincent Garcia or anybody that was performing on the stage in YGG, Sam was the gentleman running sound. He put that whole sound system together and was engineering the sound. So if you get to come to NAMM and see one of our performances, you get to hear Sam at work in terms of sound engineering. So I wanted to point that out before I forgot. So anyways, cool.
It's another arrow in his quiver.
Yeah, exactly. And then Ryan, how about
Similar for me, I was also recruited by Ben, but it actually was his wife, Claudia. She and my wife played in a volleyball league together. And she knew that I was into gear and building stuff. And so when he was looking for someone, she said, "Hey, I know this guy that's friends with his wife, used to play volleyball with me. You should hit him up." And he did. And the first time I met Ben and Sam was at the 2019 NAMM show.
Okay.
We met in person, actually. I think it was around that time when he hit me up, and I said, "Well, let's just meet up at NAMM." And that's when they showed me what they were doing with the SVT 50th was in development. It wasn't released yet.
Yep.
But I remember the first day we met, we were already sort of talking about, SVT stuff. And I mean, it was almost like, it took a little while to go through the process of like doing a job interview and all the details. But by the time we first met, it was like we were already off and running.
Nice.
Yeah.
Nice. Now, I know you guys have similar roles, but very different roles too. So I'm going to kind of ask like just a general question. What does sound design actually do? And I know I'm asking the question for anybody else that's watching. Like, what does sound design do? And you do cross brands. This kind of answers a little bit of what Cameron's asking here too, because it's not just for Ampeg, but it's also for Line 6 products as well. So what does sound design actually do for these brands? Sam, I'll go with you.
Take this one, Sam.
The way I like to describe to friends and family when I'm talking about at least the Line 6 work is, when you think of, camera apps and those filters that you have where you get these like vintage cameras or, so you get a look of a camera that you can't find anymore or get because they're really expensive. Our job is kind of like the sound version of that, where we, make these, filters and stuff like that to make whatever you use sound like if you're going through the old vintage amplifiers and all these, collectible items that you can't find, or, the weird, wacky stuff that makes your eyeballs look like, googly eyes.
Right. Okay.
But yeah. And the other ways of sound design, the way we kind of internally think about it is we're kind of like the ears of the company, as well as the connection between the analog world and the digital world.
Okay.
So, with, people like Ryan who has incredible knowledge of a depth of knowledge of just off the top of his head of all these different components, circuitry and stuff like that. Ben with, the ability to just draw schematics off the top of his head. Yeah. And me with finding really weird ways to hook up stuff because, spaghetti does stick on walls if you throw hard enough.
I've seen your spaghetti, Sam. No, that's
he had mentioned the schematic thing, and this was a hilarious moment at our last holiday party where I'm looking down and we're all having like this brunch, and on the tablecloth, which was you could write on it basically, kind of like if you're at a little restaurant, kids are like drawing on the tablecloth. Ben's drawing like a schematic of I don't even know what. Sam's drawing a schematic, and then our firmware, I think he's firmware software engineer next to him, is drawing the actual number value of pi as much as he can remember, like 30 numbers out. And I'm just like, this is the best company ever. This is great.
Wow.
Yeah, and Alex can go to 1,000, I think.
Wow.
1,000. Wow. Yeah, that's crazy. But that is a great way of describing what you do in terms of sound design. And you have to have, I would imagine, and I know this for a fact that you do, but you would have to have a working knowledge of what these amps or these filters that you're developing sound like in real life. I mean, you obviously have the real thing there too, but You know what I mean? You have to know what an SVT sounds like before you make a digital version of it, or a B15 before you make a digital version of that. Otherwise, you're just you're throwing darts in the dark at that point. So you have to kind of know. That's
and
a
you
great
guys do
question.
as much. It seems like now with Ampeg in the mix too, and not just that, but a lot of Line 6 products too now, where you're doing as much digital modeling as you are analog. I mean, like with Ryan's case, like doing circuitry, but you're like Sam, you've worked on amp projects in the past where you're, working on just like the the colorization of sound coming out of a certain speaker to the other, and how to make up for that in preamp and just all that kind of thing. So it's not just the digital part per se, right?
Yeah. So yeah, it's definitely the broad spectrum, and I'm really happy with our team because we do have such a broad spectrum of skills as well.
What would you say, like the ratio of analog to digital that both you guys handle? We'll start with Ryan, like with your general day-to-day.
Because in sound design, we are kind of the bridge between analog and digital. So it's a lot of it's analog, really. For me, I'm an analog guy. I don't know anything about. Well, I shouldn't say I don't know anything about digital.
I wouldn't say that either.
Modestly says.
I'm not a DSP guy. It's all about analog circuits and how to, a lot of it's how we measure and capture that data, and then use the various tools at our disposal to recreate it. And so for me, it's really, I don't say it's 100% analog, but it is. I mean, there's nothing that I'm doing that doesn't have some component where I'm thinking in analog at all times. And also, like, I think you were saying, like, you have to have some idea of like what an SVT or a B15 sounds like to do a digital model of it. And the same holds true for building an analog version of it.
Yeah.
And
absolutely.
And that's, I think, what we bring in sound design with our knowledge of analog. We bring to the table that ability to have an understanding of how the analog works, what it's supposed to sound like from a musician's perspective, and then bridging that gap and getting it into a digital format and having it be a representation that is accurate to those, to the analog and the and what the players want.
And that's where your backgrounds come in as musicians and bass players too, because you bring that to the table. You have intimate, like Ryan. I know you've got a B15 in your office, right?
Yeah, 3 of them.
More than I do. Damn it. But and Sam, you in the sound design room, you've got all sorts of SVTs as well as other amps, and and we've played through this stuff too. It's funny because I remember years ago when we were working on the Pro Neo cabs, and those were originally developed by EAW, Eastern Acoustic Works.
Okay.
Back when Loud owned EAW and a couple other pro audio companies. But anyways, I remember going EAWs here in New England. I remember going down to the EAW factory in Whitensville, Mass, and sitting down with their sound design guys as they were developing speakers and enclosures for the Pro Neo cabs. And they had an 810 cab with an SVT set up next to it. And I don't even know what a sine wave looks like. I am as far from an engineer as you could possibly get. I'm dangerous with a soldering iron. And I remember playing through the SVT, and the sound design guys were like, "You really want these cabinets to sound like that?" Like they were horrified because they're looking at graphs and sound waves, and they're like, "You really want these to sound like that?" Like we would never think. I was like, "No, we want these cabinets to sound like an SVT and an 810 cab. Like we don't want them to sound like what you think they should sound like, sort of thing." But to their credit, they were audio engineers. They weren't bass players. They've never heard an SVT before, other than through recordings and whatnot. Their goal at EAW was to make as transparent of an amplifier that they could. So again, getting back to your backgrounds as bass players, when Dom and I say, no, we want it to sound like all grungy and distorted and in that SVT type sound. You guys are like, oh, cool. That's what an Ampeg's kind of supposed to sound like, that warm, fat, tubby sound.
Yeah.
So, anyways, yeah.
Cameron's asking, what Line 6 products do you use as part of your rig out? Are there any? I'm sure there are.
I can't live without the Stomp. I mean, that's such a great piece of gear. And also there's a lot of them that I use. I mean, Pod Express as a battery powered headphone thing when camping, you can't beat it. It's so good. And I think just about every product that Line 6 and Ampeg make currently, I use on some level. Right?
Yeah, we're pretty spoiled
on every gig now.
Yeah.
I don't use Pod Go that much, but I use Pod Express. So it's kind of like I either use Helix or Pod Express.
Mm-hmm.
Do you guys all have Pod Expresses? Sam?
Yep.
Dom? I haven't gotten mine yet. I'm a little bummed
Send you
out.
one. Sam's got an extra. I might have an extra.
Who do I hit up for a Pod Express?
Eric, you might know.
No, I think I know where I can get one. I get the key to the closet. It's funny. Cameron was asking, has anyone ever left gear at gigs and not noticed until they got home? It's like, dude, no offense. I am as cheap comes. If I leave a bag of pick at a venue, I'm on the phone saying, could you just mail those to 11? Yeah, no.
I played a gig in college at a neighboring city. It was like 30 minutes away, something like that. And it took me halfway to the gig. Thankfully, I still caught it on the way to the gig that I realized that I didn't have my bass with me. I was so fixated on the amp and like what time to leave and all this stuff. And I was just like, I don't have an instrument with me. What's going on?
On your way to the gig.
To the gig, that was the upright.
Oh yeah.
I noticed like, oh, there's no upright bass sitting next to you. I better go back to the house and get that.
Yeah, there's not many pieces of gear that I wouldn't go back to the venue for. I mean, a music stand or a mic stand it depends on how far it is, and I think as musicians we feel more disappointed in ourselves that we left something behind versus the monetary value or the value of it. It's like,
what does it say about me?
Yeah, I thought I was way more efficient than that.
I guess the question becomes, what piece of gear has been left behind that you couldn't retrieve? I think I can't remember, but
definitely had stands disappear, but I don't think I've ever had an actual piece of gear in terms of an amp or anything. And then I've definitely had the magical like ETH to quarter adapter, or those adapters disappear.
Yeah, right. I was reading Kirk's comment here about my only wish for HX Stomp.
Really good feature request.
HX Edit to change the GUI in HX Edit to have knobs instead of slide. Huh. HX.
It's a long going war. Yeah. It's a war.
Yeah, you guys
are a war for sure.
Both of you guys just jumped right in on that too. So it's definitely.
I like knobs. I like it when the piece of gear has just one big. Yeah, I feel like Ampeg should make a bass amp that just has one big volume knob. Super simple.
I've been saying that for years.
Have a motor control with a foot switch, maybe
a volume knob.
That'd be cool.
Or just an extension volume pedal.
Yeah,
exactly.
Yeah,
I've been saying that for years. I know it.
Well, if only if you knew Guy products.
Yeah, right.
I want to know from the two of yous, from each of you, what is your favorite between Line 6 and Ampeg? Favorite past, because we can't talk anything future. Favorite past project that you worked on, and the most challenging past project, and why? Sam, you first.
Sam, you want to take it first?
Yeah. So for me, the most rewarding thing was definitely the 50th. If I constantly still kind of like just sit and daydream about how I got to be part of, a team that says like, oh, this is what the SVTs should sound like.
Yeah.
Like what my dream SVT would be. And, if I would tell 13-year-old me, like, yeah, you're gonna be able to say, like, you're gonna be able to build your ultimate SVT, and I would have just, not never believed that guy.
Were you?
Sometimes I don't.
Was it your Magnavox era one that we actually?
No, that was that was the Line 6's
Okay,
Vault
I
one.
didn't know if that was your personal one or not, because you had a really cool old it was a 70s SVT, right? I think.
No, that's just the one from here.
Okay.
Yeah. But yeah, that one sounded really great. It was in good condition, but when I first arrived, that thing was in pieces. I remember, so like I remember during my spare time at work, I put together that thing back together, and it sounded fantastic because it was taken apart when it was modeled for Helix, I believe 1.0.
Okay.
And it was never put back together. So finding all the little bits and pieces and making sure everything was fit and fiddle on that thing was fun, and just a dream of a little amp to play. But yeah, just to find that kind of like blend of certain eras and stuff like that we did for SVT 50th was definitely one of the most rewarding things I've ever done, and I would say I could die happy now because I got to do that.
Nice.
Cool.
Challenge wise,
of all time for me.
Challenging wise, I would definitely, at least for the ones I was involved with, was definitely, I would say getting 8x8 out. The VB88.
Yeah.
Oh, like all the bass players in the building were like, "It's awesome! This is the best cabinet ever!" And then we were like, and then there was a lot of delays and stuff like that. We can't talk about so much, but like, just getting that out, and because that one got out late, but we did it. Just
yes. I know. I'm so proud of that.
I'll be the one to say it. Trying to convince the bean counters that yes.
It wasn't, in their defense. Market. There was a really huge surge in neon prices, like around COVID, and that was one of the reasons why we had to pause too. It was just like, man, how are we ever going to make a business out of this thing? But
yeah,
it got out.
Everybody was like,
"Everyone, please buy one. Tell them I'm right."
Everybody was like, "You really want to develop an 8x8 $1,700 cabinet?" But if you look at the landscape of what 810s are going for, minus, yeah. So anyway, so Ryan, same question for you, my friend.
And this encompasses Line 6 and Ampeg? Or?
Yeah.
I think they're all kind of equally challenging. I think for me, some of the Line 6 modeling has been more challenging just because on the Ampeg side of it, analog circuits and that sort of stuff I'm a little more familiar with. So some of the guitar stuff maybe is more challenging for me. Like I did a lot of the models for Helix that were sort of metal amps, like the Vitriol and the Panama, these higher gain amps. And I'm not a metal guitar player, so I kind of had to teach myself how to play a few of those licks and figure out if these sound the way they're supposed to. And I leaned on a lot of my colleagues like Igor and others that were able to try those out and be like, yeah, this is great. And so that was a challenge and rewarding to get that kind of feedback. I think Venture is probably the most rewarding because I use it on every gig now. And I'm not a silent stage type of guy. I mean, I do that if I can, I guess, but I'm always going to use a bass amp. I'm never going to not have a bass amp. So I feel like to have the opportunity to work on a product that I could potentially use for the rest of my life, really. I mean, that's what that project was about for me, was making an amp that could last a lifetime. And to have that now is a huge reward. So
sure.
Yeah. Speaking of Venture, bass guitarist, 1985 was talking about heavy SVT, doesn't want to take it to the gig. Too bad Ampeg can't swap for the heavy power transformers for switch mode power supply. Cut the weight in half. You should check out Venture. That's all I'll say.
Yeah. I've always been fascinated with switch mode power supply design and trying to do that with tube amps. And stay tuned.
So again,
in the meantime, I was gonna say, if you want a lightweight Ampeg sounding solution, if you take V7 or V12, because that's more power wise and SPL wise, gonna be more comparable to an SVT. But just throw that sucker on the SGT on, put it on SVT, put the grit maybe like, I don't know, 10% up, level all the way up. I swear you're gonna close your eyes and just, oh, that's an SVT.
So I am going to comment here, and I'm probably going to get a lot of hate for this. And nothing like bass guitarist. So coming from 40 years of experience with an SVT, we have in the past, prior to YGG, have experimented with SVTs with switch mode power supplies. I've played VB3s. I've played VB2s. I've played all the Aguilar. Aguilar had an all-tube head for a while with a toroidal. I've played the Mark-based stuff. For some reason, and again, I'm not an engineer. I can't speak from an engineering standpoint. There's something about the analog, whatever you call it, the power supply and the big, heavy iron copper wound transformers in an SVT that you just cannot get from a switch mode power supply with a tube amp. They sound good. VB3 I thought sounds great. It really does. And I thought the Agile, like everything I played to sounds good, but it's not an SVT in my ears and to my visceral experience when I'm playing the amp. There's just something about it. Another interesting fact too is, and I've been in music stores all around the globe and doing Ampeg trainings. And when it comes down to discussing SVTs and tube amps, 90% of the sales guys that I've spoken to over the years will say, when people come into my store looking for an all-tube bass amp, they're asking for an SVT. Then they're not like, hey, what do you have for all-tube bass amps? They're not talking about Bassmans or PV. They're specifically, it's kind of like when you're looking for toilet paper or paper towels, you ask for the Charmin or you ask for the Bounty sort of thing. So I'll just say that. But there's just, and I've heard like some of the prototypes that Ampeg used to work on, because we've always been trying to mess around with how do we make an SVT lighter? Well, you take some wood out of the cabinet. You don't build it in a cabinet, which was the SVT2 and then the 2 Pro. Mm-hmm. There's just something about big, heavy copper wound iron transformers that you just can't get out of a toroidal or switch mode power supply. Now I'll shut up and I'll let the experts tell me if I'm right or wrong here.
But you have to remember also the output transformer on the SVT weighs 20, 25 pounds. So
yeah.
And that interaction between the output transformer and the speakers is a big part of the sound.
Mm-hmm.
So when you eliminate both, let's say you were able to make a tube amp without an output transformer, which can be done.
Yeah.
And a switch mode power supply for the power train. It's a whole other product. Could be a great sounding lightweight tube amp.
Sure.
Could be a really cool thing, but it's SVT will always be an SVT.
Yeah.
It's always going to weigh.
Oh yeah. No, and I will say this too. Like, I've got 3 SVTs up in my garage that I walk by almost every gig carrying my Venture V12 head. And I've got SVTs down here. I've got a V4B, which is my favorite all-tube amp. I love my SVTs, but in terms of portability and being able to carry it, I love my V4B. But for the most part, like Dom's saying, it's the Venture stuff is, if I had to throw a percentage on it, 90%, 95% there. It's like comparing CDs versus WAV files, or, you know what I mean? It's enough of a weight savings to me that I can sacrifice that other 5 or 10% in the experience of playing an SVT. Yeah. So
that being said, we probably won't ever stop trying to make a SVT. We'll still keep trying. Like we've given up this fight.
Yeah. No, the quest always remains. There's always going to be.
Yeah.
Well,
we're not doing our job or our industries a service if we're not constantly experimenting and trying to improve on what we're doing. And that's why we're here,
Yeah.
I always refer back to our conversation with Bill Hughes, one of the original designers of the SVT, when we interviewed him when we were doing the 50th anniversary. And I was just like, it's been 50 years and your design is still like the industry standard. And he was like, yeah, what's going on?
What are you guys thinking?
Why? It was just like, it's so heavy.
Like, why are you guys still building these things? It's like, people are still asking for them. Like, why do people still spin vinyl? And there's a little bit of romance behind it too. Let's face it.
Absolutely.
There's a lot of romance behind it. I will say just
that and the B15. It's like,
Yeah.
Which is
Yeah.
there's an analogous thing. It's like you said, listen to a record. It's
my buddy Carl pointed out a long time ago, a guy I work with, there's a ritual behind certain things. Like Carl and I are always discussing methods of making coffee, and there's always, you pop the Keurig in the thing, you press the button, 2 seconds later you get a cup of coffee. But the ritual of picking out the beans, grinding the beans, putting the beans in the French press or the I forget what they call it, the Italian boiler, like there's a ritual behind it that even though the coffee tastes the same coming out of the cup and in 20 minutes it's going to be cold as ice, it's the ritual that somehow makes it taste better. So I kind of feel the same way. It's like there's a ritual of carrying an SVT and an A10 cab up a fire escape.
Yeah. That's
and cheating death on an icy sidewalk.
Yep.
And then playing a 4-hour set. Anyways, I'm way over-caffeinated, so I'm going to shut up now.
It takes me back. The one thing I would say, I'm gonna talk about, because both Dino, actually all three of you have also tried out my little hybrid rig that I have in my office that I just absolutely love. I'm just gonna shill for it again. It's just a Venture head, SVT 210 AV, and then a Venture 210.
Yeah.
So that is currently just such a fun rig where I can do almost everything from like a very modern sound and to a very SVT driven sound just from that cabinet and head setup alone, just because I have the SGT, I have the Venture, I have the power, and then just getting the kind of the mix of the Neo with the modern tuning, and then the SVT tuning with the 210 is just such a fun rig. I keep talking about my rig to like basically every bass player I meet.
I was gonna say, yeah, he's campaigning, ladies and gentlemen. Give thumbs up for this.
Absolutely.
But you bring up a great point, which Kurt is talking about too. Like the SVT and the classic cabs are a huge part of the SVT sound, not just the 810, but the 210. Just the way those are constructed, the type of wood, the thickness of the wood, the excursion of the woofers too. I know Ryan and Sam, you guys were kind of pointing that out when we were doing Venture series too. So Venture is a different voicing of a cab, and it's trying to be a little cleaner, a little more modern, and also Neo has a big thing to do with it too, versus the SVT sound and the what's the word I'm looking for? Ferrite cab. So that's a big just a big point that Kirk is making in terms of bass guitarist 1985 trying to search for the SVT sound. With Venture, it is more SVT-ish through the classic cabs, obviously.
Yeah.
I think Dino kind of made a good point about the V4 and some of these other amps that are so great. The SVT, that sound really is the 810 for me. I mean, with an electric bass at least, and the upright too. I like playing through the 810 with the upright, but if I'm going to take the SVT, it's almost got to be the whole package, and in that case, it's always going to be a lot to carry.
Yeah,
the weight.
Yeah,
but the head itself, I use it with a 212 at home.
Yeah,
and I do use that, especially if I have a gig where I'm playing electric and upright. It's versatile, and that kind of thing. It's a little like I would probably be better served by getting a V4 with the 212, but of all that whole fascination of tube amps and how to make them lighter and different variations on all these classic circuits is a huge passion for me, and it's a never-ending hunt.
Yeah.
So for what to build next, what to try next.
What's the smallest vehicle you guys have fit an SVT 810 and the head into? I think Dino's going to beat us at this one.
I would say I used to own an old flatback 810.
Oh, nice.
And I fit that into my 1986 Toyota Corolla hatchback.
Wow.
Hey, he's close.
And I also fit a 4x10 Eden cabinet in the front seat.
Yeah, right. Sam is close, man. It might be a close second here.
What gig required both of those cabs? That's my question.
It didn't require it. I just took them all.
It's not about requirements, Dom. It's about romancing.
It's about power. How about you, Ryan?
For me, I never had an A10. I've always been backlined or cartage, so
yeah,
I never actually kept one of my own at my house. So I never had to try to cram it into a small car. But on tours and I was always vans and trailers and
as they'd say in the Three Stooges, an aristocrat.
I have a 2 heads and a 212 that I use here. I thought about, just keep my eye out. Like, should I get a huge fridge and find somewhere to put it in here? But no, I just usually they're so ubiquitous with backline companies that I never had to own one.
Yeah.
Bass guitar is a 410 and a 15 and a Honda Fit. That's impressive too.
Honda Fits are pretty. Honda Fit's got those magic seats too. So
yeah,
super fold down seats.
Yeah. What about you? You ever put one on a Harley?
I put a micro VR on a Harley.
That's crazy.
Oh wow! Okay.
With my DSX on the Harley, but no, a 1969 Bug with the passenger.
Wow.
With the passenger seat removed, so that I could lay the A10 cab on its side.
Yeah.
In the passenger area, and then I would put the SVT on the back bench because the Bugs back then didn't really have a seat; it was more of a bench. And then if my girlfriend, who's now my wife at the time, wanted to come to the gig, she would either have to sit on top of the SVT like this in the back, or have the thing resting on her thighs or resting on her lap.
Yeah.
Which, needless to say, she didn't come to very many gigs back then. But yeah, 69 Bug with an A10 cab and a head.
Wow, that's impressive. You win for sure.
I don't know. A Honda Fit and a Toyota Corolla. My daughter has a Toyota Corolla, and I barely fit in the Toyota Corolla. So, yeah, that's pretty impressive, man.
What artist was it? Rudy was telling us that he took his 69 SVT on the bus or something like
on the train.
Yeah, that's
his bass and an SVT on the train. Now, I was just doing a gig with some guys last week. We had to fly into Charlotte, and the steel player travels with his own pedal steel in a flight case that weighs about 90 pounds. So when we got to Charlotte, we had to pull that thing off. But I was thinking, it's like, well, shoot, that's not much heavier than an SVT. I could have brought my SVT down here, which I would never do. But yeah, it's, traveling with a 90-pound piece of gear is just unfathomable to me at this point. It's like backline it. Like Ryan was saying, it's just hire a backline company at that point.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's nerve wracking too, because I've traveled with pedal steel a bit in the flights, and it's just, when it comes off the baggage claim conveyor, that first open up just to see if it's survived.
You're like, you do the thing where you crack the latches and you kind of go like this and then open it and then
shake it first.
Yeah, do the shake first. I see.
That instrument's a tough one, and upright bass too. Still, the latest trend with upright bass, where people basically are just taking the necks off the basses and then putting them in a flight case, is
the Chadwick.
I still haven't even done that.
Yeah,
it's just too much.
I see more and more electric guys, even electrics, are just backlining basses.
Yeah, I've seen that too.
On gigs, they're not even traveling with basses. They'll say,
talk about romance, man. That breaks my heart. They were trying to get. I said, in terms of romance, man, that breaks my heart. They were trying to get me to do that on this last Brazil tour, and I was like, no.
I mean, for the gig that you do and the gigs that we do, but like, if I know I'm going, depending on the gig, and I know where I'm going, and I know just a good old fashioned P bass is going to be there.
Yeah.
It's a fly-in date. You're in and out. But if you're on a tour or something, man, it's like you got to bring your own. It's
like part of your expression,
Yeah. But,
I see Anthony Fregoso is on the chat. Shout out to Anthony, who here on in terms of acoustic systems and everything for Rocket Bass Venture. Yeah, he knows his stuff.
Oh yeah, Yeah, bass guitarist, 1985. It has nothing to do with being we're not worthy. It's just all about I am that old. I had a 69 bug. It wasn't brand new, but it was fairly new.
We have SVTs in romance, like Sam and Ryan. What were did you have like a first Ampeg experience? Was it a B15? Was it an SVT? Where you were just like, oh my gosh, was it an 810 specifically? Like what was that?
For me, B15s. I grew up the B15, one of them I still have was my dad's. When he closed his music store or stopped selling music gear, he kind of switched over to computers at some point. There was a B15 left in stock, and he sort of kept that amp as his own. And then growing up as a toddler, I mean, that amp was in the house. And, eventually when I started using it, it was like, oh, yeah, this is
that is so
what this
cool.
amp's supposed to sound like.
Yeah, that's great.
That was always the standard for me.
So your dad was an Ampeg dealer and had a B15 in the shop. Yep.
Yeah, that's pretty awesome.
That is pretty.
And I still have that B15. That was one of the last pieces of inventory that was.
Wow.
Yeah.
That is awesome. Man.
What about you, Sam?
For me, I grew up playing a lot of the hybrid amps. So like the 2 preamp stuff, like 4 Pro and stuff. But I remember the first time plugging to just a CL and just turning it up, and was just on this rock gig I was playing, and I was just like, man, it's so heavy, but that's just the sound.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was one of those things where it's just like I pretty much bought the next one I saw like sight unseen, basically.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's just been just great experience with that, especially through the cab I have, which is my favorite 410 cab, which is another old Ampeg PR410 HLF. It's it's got its own gravitational field, but
it does. That thing's massive.
It's such a killer sounding cabinet.
So
such a killer sounding cabinet.
Sounds so good.
Is
that the one in Helix, that 410? Is that the one? Yeah.
That is in Helix, right?
Yeah, and that's my personal cabinet.
Yeah, that's great.
Have you guys seen any changes, or I don't know how to word this. So before Ampeg was bought by YGG, obviously there were Ampeg models in Helix. And then after, there's a long story about the nomenclature of the models that were in Helix prior to Ampeg. But my question being is, what changes have gone on over the years since since Ampeg is owned by YGG? Like, what changes to the models in Helix have been done? Like, have there been improvements to the models? I know the process for modeling and shooting IRs and things like that has vastly improved over the years, but have changes been made to any of those models that are in Helix and HX Stomp and whatnot over the years as software updates come out for Line 6?
I would say not changes overall from the original models that were there beforehand, but we did add a lot of additional models.
Okay.
So post YGG was the 4 Pro, the 50th, the CL,
15, the B15.
B15.
No,
I think the 50th is exclusive to SVT Suite.
Yeah.
Oh, that's right.
Yeah.
And a lot of the stuff that we did was sort of modeled for SVT Suite, really.
Right.
I think some of those same amps might also exist in Helix, but
okay. All right. Yeah, I was just curious because I know, again, we're always trying to improve things, and I know Line 6 is always issuing software updates and new stuff into the Helix, and I'm probably on my HX Stomp and floor, I'm probably about 3 updates behind anyways, but yeah, I was just curious if it's a constant revolving door, like every time technology changes, hey, we got to reshoot these or I even to this day, I still don't, I have an understanding of how you get an SVT into a digital format, but I don't know the entire workings about it. Sam, you had brought something up interesting that I don't think a lot of people understand, that when you are capturing an amp, you not only you just like capturing it audibly, you're physically taking the amp apart to see what makes it work inside and how do we make that into a digital format, correct?
Yeah.
Without giving away too much information on our process.
Yeah. So like one of the things we like to say is like, yeah, this is a model of this particular amplifier, because, you know, there's going to be, you know, a lot of times we've got our modeling down to a point where most people say that there's more variance between two units of the same model as opposed to between, you know, our model and a real unit.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's also hard sometimes to like take things that are in the analog world that are like a switch on an amp or something like that, and like how to like actually present that in a software version that kind of makes sense too, especially if like, you know, an amp has like you hold this button in to do this, or, you know, something like that. It's like there's in like on the deep amp edit parameters and SVT suite and the Helix, like all the sag and ripple and all those things are, it's pretty cool that we expose that to the user and the way that we do that.
And I got to say, that's really cool. Like anybody that hasn't messed around with the SVT suite or the SVT model in Helix, being able to adjust that and not screwing up your tubes is invaluable.
Yeah.
Like, you know what I mean? You do that on a real amp, you're burning tubes, you know.
Yeah.
Like, but to be able to do that on a Helix is like, oh, let's see what happens if I turn the sag down or if I turn the hum up, and let's really get this thing lit up. It's kind of like what Eddie Van Halen used to do with the Variac on his Marshalls, you know, just starve it for voltage or over voltage. Or speaking of Helix, we got one of the leading guys, like the Helix bass guru, John Willis, just signed in. So John, thanks for joining us here, man.
Yeah, and thanks for that comment. It's a killer combo, man. HX Stomp and SGTDI.
Very cool. There's so many things to
I want to point out this bass guitarist, 1985. By the way, happy belated birthday. He said it was your birthday last weekend. Said SVT will still be here in 40 years, but HX Stomp not likely. I hope both are here. But I would not bank on tubes always being around. That's a trend that we have seen. I hope I'm wrong. I hope they are always around, and as long as they're around, there will be SVTs. But man, it's like it's such a what's the word I'm looking for? Like a we're on a tightrope in terms of like world economics and manufacturing, and there's only like 3 or 4 places in the world that do it right now, and hopefully that. But yeah.
No, and that you brought up a good point. It's not that we don't want to build tube amps, because as I tell people all the time, as long as I'm still with the brand, and I've been with Ampeg now going on over 20 years, it's like we'll be building tube amps, but it's getting more like I tell artists that are on the road, hey, I want to retube my CL. Do you have to? Well, no, I just feel like it's time to don't if it's working, don't mess with, like, the tube market is so, I don't want to say sketchy, but so inconsistent right now.
Yeah.
You know, it's like if you're retubing one SVT, okay, yeah, it's going to get pricey because you're going to start experimenting with different tubes and you might have a bum tube in a set. But as a manufacturer, like, you know, when we're building hundreds of SVTs at a time, now you're talking 600s of power tubes, and you know, it gets more and more challenging to build an amp with reliable tubes in them. And it's getting tougher and tougher, man. And I don't know, I hope I will never see the day that we don't build a tube amp, but it's just, you know, like I said, a lot of people will say, man, I bought a set of tubes off of, you know, blah blah blah.com, whatever, you know, the 3 big tube companies, and, you know, man, one of the tubes is dead. It's like, I hate to say it, that's not uncommon. And a lot of these companies will warranty their tubes for like 90 days or something, but for the most part, you know, you just drop $300-400 on a set of power tubes, one of them's dead. I'm the type of, like, I'm not just going to replace one tube. if anything, I'll replace the pair, or I'll replace the triplet. I'll replace one side of the amp versus, but it's getting tougher and tougher.
So, any tube woes or tube pointers from you guys, Ryan and Sam?
I mean, I'm feeling great about tubes right now, and it's similar to analog tape.
Okay, yeah.
I mean, yeah, it's not super common, but I think there'll always be amps with tubes, and there'll always be somebody making tubes somewhere, even if they're hand making them one at a time. There's a lot. I mean, I just went on a whole binge of buying. I was in San Diego over the holidays and found the surplus store down there that had a lot of tubes, and it was just ridiculous what they were selling them for. So I probably bought 300 tubes, and I'm going to have tubes. So I'm not hoarding. I'm not saying I'm hoarding.
Ryan,
maybe plenty for everybody else, but they'll be out there.
Yeah. Where do you see this? Where do you see bass amplification in the next? I would like to say 10 years, but where do you see it in like the next 50 years?
Next 15 or 50? I couldn't.
Yeah, let's say 15. Let's say 20. I said 50,
20
but
years.
I'm not even going to be around in 50 years. So,
well, the silent stage thing is definitely.
I said that on live stream, didn't I?
We'll have a robot of you, Dino, or something. Robot clone.
I think it's
Dino.
similar positions with tubes. I think people will always want to play through amps, and if you think about bass amplification on some level, it's low frequency amplification. So even if you're playing on a silent stage, you're still going to need power amps and woofers, and there's going to be an ecosystem for these products to exist on some level. And I think people will always want to use them. That's it's my preference, though. I mean, that's my take. It is biased based on the fact that I like to play through a bass amp, and I like to have that thing sitting right next to me. And in-ears are okay too, but they both have their place. And it's like digital versus analog too. It's like digital is really good for some things, and analog is really good for some things. And when you can make a product like SGT-DI that uses analog for all the things that analog's good at, and digital for all the things that digital's good at, and put them together, it's a winning combination.
Yeah, that's a great point. That's a very valid point. Yeah, it's just I see more and more, and again, I don't mean to play the old man card, but I see more and more way younger players that are touring. They're doing fly dates. It's not like they're playing in their. Actually, I see more younger players that are playing in their garages using amps, but a lot of the younger players now that are doing fly dates, I'm fly boards, a pedal board like this. This is my bass rig. And a lot of times, to our credit, it is an HX Stomp, or I see a lot of guys with the Noble that is a tube preamp, or an SGT-DI. But I just see it. I question. It's like some of these younger players that are touring like that. The question always comes up in the back of my mind. It's like, have you ever played through an SVT in an 810 cab, or an SVT, or any all tube amp? A wall of sound. Have you ever had that experience?
Yeah.
And I'm hoping I'm wrong in thinking that way. I'm hoping along with but obviously on this particular gig, I can't travel with that kind of an amp, granted. But it's just as players get younger and new generations come in, and there's less and less walls of amplifiers like this, have they had that experience? And man, I invite any young players. Like, I get Berkeley's an hour south of me, and a lot of times, like when I'm down there, I'll tell the younger guys, like, I'll bring an SVT down here. Don't I sound like my father? Don't make me bring an SVT down here. But it's like, no, I'll bring an SVT. You guys are more than welcome to come up here, and I'll set all this stuff up in the garage, and we'll have a friggin' 6 SVT 810 cab jam, and my neighbors will love it. What's that, Don?
And then you all play Big Bottom.
We'll all play Big Bottom. Don't make me play Big Bottom. Hey, we're knocking on. Well, we're well past an hour here, but I want to we're going to close this out with like we do with every SVT time. So we're going to ask the inevitable 12. Are we up to 12 questions
We're up
now?
to 13 now, I want to say. I could be
We're
wrong.
up to 13. Yeah, we are up to 13. So because we're pressed for time, you got to give us your immediate answer. You can't dwell on it. You can't say, "Oh, that's a good question. Let me think." Whatever pops in your mind. So we'll do it in this order because Ryan's on top and Sam's on the bottom. We'll have Ryan answer first and then Sam. Okay. All right. You guys ready?
Yeah.
All right. P bass or jazz bass?
Jazz bass.
Sam.
P.
Okay. Passive or active?
Passive.
Passive.
Okay. Rounds or flats?
Flats.
Rounds.
Okay. B15 SVT or Pro Series or Venture at this point?
Say that one more time. Sorry.
B15 SVT, Pro Series or Venture?
I'm going to go Venture.
Okay.
I'm sticking SVT.
Okay. Cable or wireless?
Cable.
Cable.
Okay. Pick or fingers?
Fingers, but I use my fingers like a pick. So
Okay. That's fair.
Fingers.
Okay. IEMs or floor wedges?
I am.
I'm a wedge guy.
Okay. Window or aisle?
Window.
Window.
Okay. Wow. Okay.
Wow.
Yeah. 2 windows.
It's rare.
High bunk, middle bunk, or low bunk?
Low bunk.
I've never seen a middle bunk, but high.
Okay.
Oh no, I have. Never mind.
Black with white piping or silver and blue anniversary?
That's tough. I'll go with the black.
Okay.
Black with white piping. Yeah.
Same answer. Yeah. Okay. These last two are kind of silly. Hot chocolate or coffee?
Coffee.
Coffee.
Okay. And then last but not least, favorite place to eat when you're on the road?
Oh man, that's supposed to be quick.
This is the
Like a
toughest
Cracker
one.
Barrel. I don't know.
The Cracker Barrel works, man.
Yeah.
Chicken and dumplings, baby.
Also, I also love Bojangles, which they don't have on the West Coast at all. But
Yeah.
that was always a treat in North Carolina.
Okay.
I've not been on the road a lot.
Even when you're traveling.
I try to find any place off the beaten path.
Okay.
Yeah. Like
All right,
a
fair enough.
place.
No chain restaurants.
No chains.
Okay. All right. Good. Yeah, that's it. 13 questions.
That was definitive.
Like I said, yeah, exactly. That's the quickest. I mean, we had 2 people answering this, Tom.
Yeah.
And that's the quickest we've ever been. Yeah, because a lot of times it'd be like, when you ask in-ears or well, it depends on who's running sound, and it's like, no, you got to give us your desert island answer.
Yeah.
No, interesting, very cool, guys, man. Thank you for taking the time out of your day and doing this. Like I said, this is, it's always nice to have artists. It's always nice to talk about new products like Dom and I do, but I think this is special too because we want to introduce more of us that work behind the brand. You know what I mean? It's not just this pretty face. Sorry. But you know what I mean? Like I want people to know, like we used to have a saying back in, I remember this when it was, in the history lesson of Ampeg, the original key phrase was, built by musicians for musicians. And this is the purpose of this. It's back to being a brand that is built by musicians and engineered by musicians for musicians. And there's a lot to
amazing business.
Yep, exactly. And somebody was telling me they went and saw Ben Adrian's band this weekend.
Yeah.
And they said he was like, you don't usually hear about Ben playing out, but they said you got to go check it out next time he's playing because it was like fantastic. It's a great band. So, yeah, man, thank you so much for doing this. We'll have you guys definitely back on, and you know, as new products come out, I know you guys will be involved in it, so we can't talk about new products that we're working on now, but as these products come out, have you guys come back on and get your thoughts and what the thought process was behind it. And thank you for entertaining Dom and Dom's and mine silly ideas that we present all the time, like Thunderwear and all sorts of weird. Anyways, as usual, thank you to everybody that's watching.
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah, seriously, like you guys make it happen too. All the interaction between viewers this is what I love, is guys asking questions and the interaction between everybody viewing. So next week we're not skipping a week. We do have another guest next week, and that's actually Tim Storaci from Why Not. And actually somebody had recommended a bunch of SVT times ago when we asked who would you like to see. A couple of people had chimed in saying, man, we'd love to see Tim Storaci. So he's coming up next week. And so be here, be square. That's it for us, guys.
John
Thanks
Willis.
again.
Guys, thanks for having us.
Thank you so much.